behind on my board update. I don't think I read the one from last week. I didn't get all my questions in, so yeah, I've been trying to follow the tab stuff. It's taking a lot of, okay. Not sure, Nicole isn't feeling well, so I don't know if she'll be here. I'll go ahead and get ready. On Monday night. Okay. All right, thank you all for joining us tonight. We are going to go ahead and call to order our work session meeting for March the 2nd, 2023. It is 6:05 p.m. Dr. Hooker, if you would conduct our roll call.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Heidi Hensley,
Here.
Ms. Claudia Butts,
Here.
Ms. Linda Davids,
Here.
Dr. Patricia Yeager,
Here.
Mr. Tim Denson,
Here.
Dr. Mumby Anderson, Dr. Lakeisha Gant,
Here.
Ms. Nicole Hull, and Mr. Mark Evans.
Here.
All right, thank you very much. We have a quorum. We are going to move forward to item 3. This is to amend and/or adopt our agenda.
I move that we adopt the agenda as printed.
Second.
All right, we have a motion by Ms. Davis, a second by Ms. Hensley. Any questions or follow-up conversation?
Madam Chair, I'd like to include our mayor to be included on the discussion with the TAD, give him an opportunity to speak to our board.
Okay, wonderful. So we've made note to include that inside of the MALTAD amended agreement discussion. And so that's noted here. Thank you, Dr. Hooker, for letting us know. All in favor of adopting the agenda as it's listed before us, if you would raise your hands and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The same signs. Okay, so that motion passes. We'll move forward with the agenda that is printed before us. Number 4 are our informational items. A is our early Head Start reports, our Athens Community Career Academy report, and then our SPLOS monthly report. Let's start with that first one. Any follow-up questions or conversations? All right, we'll move forward to the Athens Community Career Academy report.
I'll just say I really enjoyed the joint meeting that we just concluded, so thank you.
Yes, thank you. We did have our joint meeting with the Athens Community Career Academy, and we're able to get a lot of updates and ask questions as we are each year, and so we are thankful for that to the Athens Community Career Academy. Any additional questions or follow-up?
I have a question.
Sure.
I was reading the document and I see that they have a cosmetology a part. Is barber school also in there, or someone, do we have someone in there that's doing barber with the students?
I believe I can answer that. Currently, we just have cosmetology. I do not believe we have barber program included in that.
What a great opportunity.
Thank you. Any additional questions? All right, what about our SPLOS monthly report? Okay, we'll move forward to our board and community reports here. That first item is our Community Oversight Committee and SPLOS report.
That's me. I sent highlights out right after the meeting that we had on the 14th, and also there was the Sam sent an email out to all of us detailing all the things that were in there. So that's it. I mean, all of that's in there. There wasn't much. So.
Okay, thank you. Any follow-up questions for Mr. Evans? Okay. We have the Georgia School Boards Association, and under this item, a couple of months ago, I think, my timing may be off, but we talked about needing to have a delegate identified for the assembly, the summer assembly, so that we can take a position, we can have someone there to take a position on behalf of the board. And from my understanding, that is where we are with this particular agenda item. We need to identify a person to take on that responsibility. Dr. Anderson, is there any additional information other than what's listed here that I'm forgetting?
Nope. No, just that the deadline is May 4th, and the delegate assembly will happen in June at, like you said, at GSBA conference. So if we have any takers,
I'll volunteer. Savannah, right?
Mhm.
I'll volunteer to be the alternate.
Wonderful.
Do you want
Okay.
to be the primary and let me be the alternate? Are you anxious to go?
I was planning on going, but I mean,
Well,
I don't
excellent. You
want to.
can be the primary, I'll be the alternate. I just didn't want us to spend 20 minutes, so.
okay.
Okay, so
I'm
Mr.
fine with
Denson.
either way, yeah.
Okay, Mr. Denson is primary, Ms. Davis is the alternate.
Excellent.
Generally, this is one of those conferences as well that Ms. Palmer has sent out notification. So if it's something we're interested in going or attending, want to strongly encourage as many board members to attend as possible. So certainly would expect the alternate and the primary person to be there along with any board members that are able.
And Tim, just so you're, Mr. Denson, just so you're aware, we will have until April 17th to submit any thoughts that we have on all of the legislative positions that will be presented at GSBA. So if you don't mind, we'll just kind of let you take the lead on getting the board cohesively responding and providing their feedback and all of that, so that we can have that final document submitted to them by April 17th. So I'll share that out with you.
Yeah, and so that means that you said it was April 17th, right, Dr. Anderson? Yeah, and so really, over these next few weeks, just sort of keeping us updated and letting us know what we need to do. We will probably need to, if you feel that we need to have that as an agenda item, certainly, you know, as far as you gathering more about our positions or however you decide you want to be able to gather that information. But just let us know how we can support you with those efforts.
Okay, yeah, I'll get back with you over the next few weeks, and we can find a way to. Thank you.
So has that proposed agenda come out yet? Or is it going to wait until after the legislature, the session closes?
What was that, Ms. Davis?
Has the agenda come out yet from GSBA? No? Okay.
No, not yet.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So that is all that we have for our community board reports. Item 6, these are our advisory board reports.
We didn't do, Dr. Gant, we didn't do Envision Athens.
I'm sorry, did I skip something?
Envision Athens? C?
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. Rewind. Okay, not item 6. This is C, Envision Athens.
Madam Chair, I can report back. That, yeah, I think I sent it to Lisa. I think it's on there now. That, yeah, so we have the minutes from the last meeting, along with a synopsis of the new what they're calling pillars, but priorities that Envision Athens is focusing on for this new strategic plan that we just passed recently. So that's there for y'all to peruse and look at. And the Envision Athens board looks forward to working on those creating a committee, if they haven't already had one, for each one of those pillars, and working forward, and definitely having CCSD as a partner in all those. So I'm happy to, off this meeting, answer any questions or comments anybody has.
So do we have those minutes? I see the attachment now, okay. I didn't sign in last time. All right, I'll go back and read them.
All right, any follow-up questions for Mr. Denson? All right, now we will move forward to our advisory board reports. And if you take a look, we have the Superintendent Student Advisory Council, the Teacher Advisory Board, and the Board Advisory Committee. And that particular committee is scheduled to meet on the 15th, and then the Parent Advisory Board. And I think based on our last conversation, we are still waiting to get those dates for the Parent Advisory Board meetings. But once we get those dates, that is one of the committees that we rotate in our attendance. Any questions or further discussion about any of those advisory committees?
So the Board Advisory Committee didn't meet in January as scheduled, and some of us were supposed to go to that meeting. Are we then now supposed to go to the April meeting, or are we going to wait? Those of us that were supposed to, the board members that were supposed to attend in January, are we planning for the April, or are we now moving to someone in the future?
Well, that would be 4 members at that meeting, so it's still under a quorum.
Okay, so plan to go to
yeah,
April 12th?
I would say if you want to attend,
Yeah,
that it's
I think that
fine.
would be the easiest.
We're not
Okay.
breaking a policy. So
What time is that?
I believe it's 6 o'clock,
Oh,
Ms.
okay. I have
Bones?
30.
Is it 5:30? 5:30?
So it's an evening meeting on the 12th?
I believe it's 5:30. We're talking about the board advisory meeting. It starts at 5:30. Yes.
5:30.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Actually, yes, we'll, I think Ms. Butts had her hand up, and then we'll come back to Mr. Denson.
My question was about the Parent Advisory Board. How, do the parents just sign up to be on the board, and how many parents are on the board? And do we have the last date they've met? And is it each school, or is it just the whole district?
I believe we have a representative from each school. That committee is led by Mr. Omar Reed. I have worked with him. I don't see him in the audience, but we're planning, he's sitting in the back. I'm sorry, Mr. Reed, I did not see you. We're working to get a date in March to meet with the Parent Advisory Committee. As soon as we get that together, I will email the board and let them know. We're looking forward to meeting with them as well.
I know that historically, this is not accurate because it may, things may have changed since the pandemic and, 15 years ago when I was doing Parent Advisory Board. But historically, the schools will identify a person, as Dr. Hooker said. So each school should have a person on that Parent Advisory Board. The meetings, however, are open to the public. They're like our meetings. I am not sure when their last meeting. I feel that it's probably been 9 months maybe, but I can't be sure, but we can get that information for you. Yeah.
I don't believe it's been this school year at all, yeah.
Yeah, a while ago, there was like a set day each month, and the locations just rotated from east side to west side. Again, I don't, with the pandemic and before then, I'm not sure exactly what has shifted, but I do know there's been a lot of interest because it is one of the primary ways, not the only way certainly, because, all parents can't come to meetings in the evening, but it is one of the ways that parents are able to engage. Mr. Denson?
Thank you. My question was on the Board Advisory Committee. Who are the board members that are appointed to that? 'Cause I just wasn't sure who it was.
There's a spreadsheet that has who was assigned to go to each one, and we did include the new members in that rotation, but I may have not sent that out to any of the new members yet because we didn't have the January meeting, so I will make sure that I share that document with you all.
Okay. So it just rotate, okay,
Uh-huh.
thank you.
You're
Yeah.
just going to share
Yeah,
that
you
with
guys were
everybody, right?
included.
Okay, thank you, great.
Yeah. Originally, it was a set amount, but this year, after the last Cognia report and feedback, in order to avoid sort of this unintentional creation of a committee, after we had dissolved our committees, the board decided that we would have rotating members. So,
And it's also important to understand this is led by the board. Ms. Bonas is there, but the discussions are led by the board, and you will have a reporter or a record keeper to come back to report to the board as to what took place during those meetings.
and I'm not sure if we need to send that out again. I can't recall, but I know at one point we did, Dr. Hooker, your staff and Ms. Bones sent out, I think, an email asking about what type of topics and feedback we would want, what type of conversations the board wanted to have with this committee, because the purpose of it is really to just maintain at least an aspect of really bidirectional communication, so we can hear from people in the community and then they can hear from us as well, so. All right. Item 7 is the board president's report. I will just remind us that our self-assessments should be completed. Ms. Palmer, I think, sent out a reminder for us to complete that. So when you have an opportunity, go ahead and complete that. It needs to be completed by tomorrow. I think that was the extension, so by tomorrow. I also want to put on your radar that right now, we had a call meeting for Monday for like hearing and student purposes. And we had also talked about having that, after that call meeting, another meeting shortly after that to take action on the TAD that we've been considering. We are going to have to reschedule that meeting. And so I just wanted you to be on the lookout for, I think this communication came a little bit, we've been talking about this a little bit later, but potentially for that hearing and call meeting to be on the 7th, and then the other hearing that Ms. Palmer has communicated with us about to be on the 9th. But between Dr. Anderson and myself and Ms. Palmer, we will reach out to try to confirm a date that works with everyone, or at least with the quorum. Did I misstate something?
Yes, I
Okay.
believe I have on my calendar as Monday for the first appeals meeting to start at 4 p.m. The second appeals meeting, it will be on Thursday, March the 9th at 5. We do need a quorum for that, so if we can get that taken care of tonight. So if we can get a raise of hands of individuals who will be able to attend the March 6th hearing appeal, it's at 4 p.m.
Okay, I didn't think we had a quorum. I thought that was the last communication I received, that we did not have a quorum.
We
For-
don't currently, but they wanted to see if we
Okay.
could get one established
So that we can keep that time?
Yes.
Exactly.
We're not sure about two of our board members because of other obligations with the MARC meeting. Am I correct
Yeah.
in saying that on the 6th? So if we...
And also Mr. Pruitt, which I think is sort of, to me, is important when we have those meetings.
Yeah, and I can arrange to be here. At 4:18 this afternoon, we got a notice from Ms. Dye coordinates the MARC committee's meetings, that she can do that meeting instead of at 4 o'clock on Monday from 2:30 to 3:30 on Monday. But I don't see any responses. I mean, 2 of the MARC committee members are here, 3 of them are here because Mayor Gertz is here. So I don't know if that'll work out to move that to 2:30 or not. If it did, then
That frees us up.
that frees you up.
And just to be sure, it's hard for me to hear, so that means that we would keep that meeting at 4?
Right.
Okay.
That works. Can you respond to them and let them know that Linda, Ms. Davis, and I can do that?
Yeah, I'll do that.
Thank you so much.
And now that we have that, those 2 members can attend the hearing on March the 6th, do we have 3 other volunteers who can be there March the 6th for the appeal?
I can be there March the 6th.
At our original time,
Yes,
right?
4 o'clock.
4 PM.
I can be there March the 6th.
Okay.
Okay, thank
So
you.
we have Ms. Budd, Evans. I can still do 4 PM on Monday.
All right, we have a quorum.
Got it, so we're good.
All right, so we also need a quorum for.
I'm sorry, let me just be sure I have my notes here. Who is the quorum for 4 PM?
Lynn,
Linda, Tish, Lakeisha, you, and me.
So you all will be done by 4?
yes.
Yes, it's just going to be a vote.
Okay, okay.
I
Because
mean-
I wasn't sure that we were certain if it would spill over, but you'll, okay. All right, so, all right, well, so we'll keep that at 4.
Then on March the 9th at 5 PM, we have another appeals meeting, so we need a quorum for that as well.
I'm good, March 9th at 5.
Thank you.
I'm available March 9th at 5.
Thank you.
I'll be
Ms.
there March 9th at 5.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. 2 more.
I can.
Ms. Hensley and Mr. Denson.
I can be there a little bit, it'll probably be a little bit after 5, but I can get here as quick as possible. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a quorum. I'll
Right.
be there.
Okay, you'll be there?
Mhm.
Okay. All right. Possibly
I should
Mr.
be able to
Denson
be there as well.
and possibly Ms. Anderson. So we have a total of 7. Am I correct in saying that?
Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
And so just to be clear, that 4 PM hearing, disregard what I said earlier, the 4 PM hearing is still on Monday.
Correct.
And then after that is when we will go into the call meeting for TAD, to take action on the TAD. Okay, so that is on the 7th. And then the 9th is,
6.
I'm sorry, 6. Goodness. All right, and then that next meeting is on that Thursday.
Yes.
I apologize. Which is the 9th. Okay.
CAD meeting's on the 16th.
And
I
Ms.
hate to
Palmer
do
will
that.
send out, Dr. Hooker and Ms. Palmer will send out calendar invites for us.
Yes.
So it'll populate onto our calendar. So self-assessment, call meeting dates, and then I am going to turn the floor over during the president's report or the leadership report for Dr. Anderson and Ms. Davis to give us an update on their meetings with the MARC.
Do it before the presentation.
Okay, so before the TAD presentation? As a part of that?
Mr. Pruitt.
So Mr. Pruitt's recommendation was that the developers get a chance to present, and then we have a conversation. That's the last email that I think I saw from you.
Sure, they're here to present tonight. Now, whether you and Ms. Davis, either or both, want to
Oh,
talk
okay.
before them, after them, whatever is fine. I would suggest that we try to do it all under 9C, though, rather than split it up with these things in between.
Okay.
Well, I do understand that there have been some amendments made to the community benefits agreement since we had our meeting on Monday, so maybe it would be helpful to hear what those amendments are, rather than jumping the gun and having a conversation about something that may already have been addressed.
And being that we have the mayor here, could he give us an update on those as well? when he speaks, he can give us an update on the changes that took place.
Okay, so I have Dr. Anderson and Ms. Davis under item C. All right, that is it for the board president report. Dr. Anderson, can you think of anything else that would go under? Okay, we'll move forward to item 8. This is our superintendent report. Dr. Hooker?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening to everyone. Glad that you're here with us tonight for our work session. I would like to start out my comments today by thanking Mr. Brandon Gaskins. This is his last work session with us as an employee of Ccsd. I've only worked with Mr. Gaskins for 152 days, 8 hours, and 32 minutes. I do want to say thank you for the hard work that you have done here in CCSD starting in 2018. Your leadership has been very valuable, leading us as the Chief of Academics. We appreciate the work and that your focus has always been on improving student learning. Thank you for your work, and we wish you the best success in your next endeavor. Thank you, sir. All right, we've already talked about the appeals. My last comment today is just want to remind our board and the audience, I know that everyone has read our Cognia report that was sent out on February. We received a report from the Cognia on February the 8th. Board members had an opportunity to read through it on February 9th. We have had I've had discussions with the president and some of you in our one-on-one meetings. As you know, we're still under review. We were able to come out from under review for standard 1.7, which is leaders implement operational processes and procedures to ensure organizational effectiveness in support of teaching and learning. And we are very appreciative of that. There's one area that we do need to work on, and that's standard 1.5. The governing and the authority adheres to a code of ethics and functions within the defined roles of responsibilities. I can assure you as a governance team, it is our priority to work collaboratively to be removed from the Cognia review, which will take place in August of 2023. We do not take this report lightly, and our work is focusing on improving student learning experience for all students. So this team, we have a retreat on March 18th. We will be going into developing action steps as to how we move forward. Not only that, as we meet one-on-one, we will have discussions concerning that. I can share with the community and those of you here, I truly believe, and I know our team knows that we are able to do this. It's in the best interest of our students. We know the effects that it has on our students when we are continuing to being under review for Cognia, and we're going to work to do what's right for students. And I appreciate this team's hard work and steps that we've spoken about as to how we move forward. Thank you. That concludes my comments.
Any questions about either of those reports? Okay, we are going to move forward to item 9. These are our presentations and discussions. The first one is Ellard Hall, the renovation versus the new bill analysis.
Good evening, board members. First, I want to apologize. I'm fighting a cold here, so my voice is a little hoarse. So I'll try to muster through. What we have are some slides of the board campus. Ellard Hall, and the building, the structure in question is the house that's located in the lower right corner of the parking lot. The front of the house faces Cobb Street, so just to kind of give you a reference. Next slide is the front entrance of the house. And again, that's faces Cobb Street. This is just kind of going around in a counterclockwise fashion, the house and the big oak tree beside it, the rear of the house. This is our non-compliant ADA ramp. So One of the analysis or reviews we had to do was in order to use this for a district facility, we would have to have an ADA access to the front of the building. Again, this is just a shot from the parking lot. And then kind of the corner of the porch. And then I believe some of you have had the opportunity to take a tour of the crawl space basement. And this is, there's asbestos and lead that has to be abated out of this structure. We've got some asbestos in the basement. We also have to do encapsulation of the crawl space. There's 2 existing HVAC units that need to be replaced that are sitting on some wood pallets in the dirt. And that's the water heater and the old coal chute. This is a floor plan of the existing structure. Thing to note is that on the bottom floor, you have roughly 2,700 square feet of usable space. What we had proposed to look at a review of utilizing this for student registration and some other functions, or building a new structure. So that's kind of the analysis. So the key here is to remember that 2,700. Back when we purchased the property, R.W. Allen gave us a proposal just to do the lead removal, asbestos abatement, crawl space encapsulation, and get it and ADA access to the front porch to where we could get to the first floor and use it, and that was roughly $384,000. That wasn't doing any upgrades to any HVAC, electrical, anything like that. So it would not be to our current standards that we build to. This would be just to kind of get us in the door. And at that time, the board decided, nope, we don't want to do that. Let's put this portion of the project on hold and hold off on that. So the next slide kind of shows a proposed layout if we did want to try to move student information services in there. And again, having the registration function in residential sized rooms is not ideal. We'd have to do something as far as vestibule or security vestibule. And just, if you go up to the second floor where we have them now and look at their space, this is a lot more chopped up and very inefficient for that function. So what we had proposed, we looked at basically taking the footprint of where the existing house sits and constructing a new facility, which would be approximately 4,700, 4,800 square feet. We would be able to go to the outlines of the asphalt so we don't take up any parking, which would, we're not having porches and that type of thing, so we can have more usable space. So we actually go from the current space for registration of 1,115 square feet to roughly 1,358. And it's kind of in the center, it's on the lower part of the page, and Lisa, if you can blow that out. And it allows us also some additional functions in there as well. So I think we have homeless ed and some of their storage and things like that. So we'd be able to relocate 2 other departments from within the board office out to the facility on the new facility we propose to build. And this would be on grade, it'd be a slab on grade, so you would walk right up to it versus having to go up a ramp or walk up a set of stairs. So what we did here is kind of did a breakdown of what it would be for a renovation cost versus a new build. And roughly, if you look at the numbers, it's $1.7 million to renovate up to our current Ccsd standards versus a new build of approximately $1.48 million. For basically, for almost twice the amount of space that you would get out of a new build. And just some, we haven't done any planning with the architects, but just kind of some of the preliminary designs. There was some concern about having an industrial-looking building or a commercial building up front. One of the proposals, we could do something that had kind of the hip roof, kind of a bungalow-style design. We could do the cementitious lap siding on it, or you could do masonry. So it just all depends. But we haven't gone any further than that. That's kind of just a proposed schematic that we did. And this just has some different configurations on windows and doors and things like that.
Thank you, Mr. Gilbert, for your presentation. Are there any questions from the board members? Yes, Mr. Denson.
Thank you. And thank you for the presentation. I really appreciate that. For one thing, I was going to ask if the new board members could also get a tour. It'd be great, I think, and helpful for me if I could, and probably for some of the others that have not been able to yet. And on the,
Sorry, could you please repeat that?
I'm sorry,
We
I was
didn't
asking
get
if the new board members could receive a tour
Oh.
of the house also, since we hadn't had the opportunity to yet. And then I had a couple of questions on here. One being, with these, whichever direction we end up going, what is the funding source that would be for this? Is it?
Well, the hope would be is the sale of the houses that we're doing, the two adjacent to this building, and then proceeds we get from this would help fund that. And then any shortfalls would be made up out of SPLOST.
Okay, that's helpful. And my other question is, yeah, it definitely seems like a drastically higher dollar amount, going from the under 400,000 up to the 1.7 million. And I saw on the memo before, it was, citing the roofing and electrical and plumbing and such that was not in there. It just still seems, I guess my question is there a middle ground somewhere? Because I kind of looked through the schematics, and it was definitely a very complete renovation of a historic building that was kind of requested there. And I guess, is there a middle ground that we could send out for an RFP that's somewhere between the super basic 384,000 and the kind of everything you would want on a historic house renovation at the 1.7? Is there a way that we could try to find a little middle ground there that covers the roofing, does more than just the absolute basics, but still gets it to a place where it's affordable for us to be able to keep this, historic house, which I think offers a really unique way to interact with the public that has history of this community and such?
I mean, I'm sure we could look at something. The challenge that we have is trying to bring it up to our standards. The windows are single pane windows, so they're not thermal, energy efficient windows. The insulation within the walls is probably suspect. The house has plaster that's on the wood lath, so chances are it probably has less than what the R value is. I'm not even sure. There's asbestos, there's lead, so we have children that potentially would be in this house. So we have to totally abate the lead out of the houses, which is one of the major expenses. So then it comes down to, okay, do I just dispose of the doors and put in a new door, or do I strip the doors down and remove all the lead paint and refinish them from that point? The house is wrapped in vinyl siding right now, has aluminum trim on the soffits and fascia. So again, you take that off, there's probably old wood clapboard siding underneath it that's covered in lead paint. So a lot of the original architectural characteristics that made that house historic are no longer there. They're covered in vinyl siding. They've been modified. The front porch railings as they are not the period correct front porch railings. You can go to Home Depot and pick up the balusters and all that stuff. The brick infill, the masonry infill between the pilasters, the brick piers was done after the fact. Again, back in that time, the house would have had masonry piers. Structurally, there's some undermining of some of the piers under the house in the dirt crawl space, so those have to be rebuilt. So there's a whole bunch of things that you got to do to get, and then what happens is you end up with 2,700 square feet, because we have offices upstairs, but if an employee is on crutches or a wheelchair, we have no access to the upstairs. So we potentially open ourselves up to a lawsuit for that.
Correct. I know there is ways that go around that, which UGA does with a lot of their historic buildings they have on campus that does not have ADA access to upstairs, or heck, my wife's building right now, which is in the basement, that's not ADA compliant, but they still use it, as long as there was those access. But yeah, I guess I'm just wondering if we can just explore maybe some kind of middle ground that can get there, because I understand the challenges with it, but I do think there's also a lot of merit and benefit it has of having part of the Clark County School District complex, this historic house, which I understand is not necessarily completely pristine with its historic accuracies and the way it was built, which is true of many historic buildings in Athens. But I think it does bring a lot of value to this community. And honestly, I think it's like it's a very interesting and unique component, I think, of this campus, much like this, this old sanctuary that we're in now, that we've kind of, you know, kept these historic elements to. So I would just wonder, yeah, if we could just, that's what I would like to see, if we could just explore maybe trying to find a middle ground that gets us where we need to be, but it's not quite as expensive as the $1.7 million, and finds a way that we could still use this historic structure, and then maybe finds ways that we could use the upstairs for some uses that wouldn't get us in trouble with ADA compliances.
Thank you, Mr. Denson. Ms. Davis, did you have a question?
Well, thank you, and similar comments. I don't think I knew, I certainly didn't know the history of this house in the past, and I don't think we've had a vote on it yet. But I would love to see us actually, I know we don't like to have these committee meetings, but this is a lot to process, just sitting up here, going across this room. I would love for us to maybe at least gather, having an ad hoc committee appointed to look at this plan especially, because I think it's significant to preserve as much of our past as we can. So what I just heard was that, just looking at the document that you sent, we were going from 5,498 square feet down to 4,792, and now I'm hearing 2,000? Where is this?
Right, on the first floor, the accessible floor is 2,700 square feet of the existing house.
But you do have a plan in here to build that out, right, that would accommodate the needs of the registration?
Yeah, we have, it's a layout of, if we had to use that space as is, we would try to fit them into the different rooms. It's not very efficient, you know, not very conducive for the registration process that they have now.
So again, we're in that situation where we have a building that we want to renovate and we don't have a principal and a building committee. And so I'd really like to see us build something to take that space so that we can all understand exactly what we can possibly do with this. That's my request.
Thank you for your comments, and I do want to thank you, Mr. Gilbert, for you and your team working to build out this plan for us. As you know, this renovation needs to take place as soon as possible. This is a discussion that the team has had in advance, close to several months in advance. Am I correct? This is not something new that is being brought to the team. Am I right?
I've not seen these diagrams.
But we've had discussions about the renovation of this building
Again,
over several months.
yeah.
Well, I don't know that it's been over several months. It has been, you know, when we decided to acquire, you know, this space, I know that there were some discussions around what would be done with the, you know, the other facilities and homes that was shared with us as a part of that original conversation. I don't want to misspeak on behalf of the board, but what I think I gathered at that time, we have sort of a new board right now, but is that it was a lot to process, right? You know, because we acquired this building, there were major renovations to this building, and then, you know, we had to figure out like what else would be happening with the homes that were here. So it's not something that we've had on the agenda like multiple times. It's not something that we've discussed for several months, but it has come up before. But this is my first time, I think, seeing at least this sketch. And I know what you're saying, Mr. Gibbert, is that this is not necessarily a final
Right.
whatever. This is just sort of a potential.
Right.
Well,
I think that is where we are.
Yeah, I guess I'd like to say is that you guys charged me with providing safe, secure, efficient, aesthetically pleasing facilities while being physically responsible with taxpayers' dollars. So that's what I'm trying to do is that, you know, I know the needs of what student registration and some of the other departments are. So I'm trying to design and develop an efficient layout that's going to help, because right now the current process we have with them being upstairs is not good for people that come in that have accessibility problems. They've got to get to the elevator. It's not very secure. They kind of get lost in the maze coming back. Whereas if you had a facility that was on grade that you were able to pull up to, not the back door, but we would make the front door facing the gym to where it's a lot more accessible for, you know, our end users of the building. You know, the staff and students and parents, you know, trying to register kids. So that's kind of how how I'm looking at it and how I've approached it.
Thank you, Mr. Gibbert. All right,
Okay, thank you. So item B is our community and family engagement presentation.
thank you, Dr. Gant. At this time, we'll have Dr. Soraya and Mr. Alex to give us a brief presentation on the community and family engagement. Thank you.
Thank you, Board. Thank you, Dr. Hooker. First of all, thank you for allowing us to be here tonight and share a little bit of the story of this team and what I have done so far. So, Board members, Dr. Hooker, today we ask ourselves if the forward-thinking, trust, and investment placed in this department the past 19 months by the Board and the Superintendent is bringing dividends, and if it addresses obstacles that prevent students from being ready to learn. Unless we address and support our students to come ready to the schoolhouse, we will continue to see just half of the picture that builds true academic success. Just remember, before school comes the child. The whole child is this team's focus. This team has become enlightened in understanding that quiet isn't always peace, and norms and notions not challenged by listening to the voices we serve aren't always equitable. Our community school organizers have engaged with Athens community organizations, built relationships, listened to the community voices, connected gaps to resources, advocated for students' non-academic needs, and erased many lines that separated community support to our schools. Our FESs continue to build meaningful school-based relationships with families, gather academic resources, and help their school families feel connected and understand the school they attend. We'll focus today on gaps that, unless addressed, will never be able to build better schools that bring the tools necessary to build a student that can face the challenges of an ever-evolving world. We'll speak to data known to the Board and to the Athenians who live this experience daily. But we will also highlight solutions that a committed team that believes that when we focus on the whole child support, all stakeholders understand the importance of collaboration and investment in each child becoming the platform for every family to thrive in the community they love. I wanted to take a moment to thank Dr. Hooker for coming and greeting our family engagement specialists and stopping by our Bridge the Gap initiatives. Your belief in family and community work emphasizes the importance of a school system that understands the value of family and community collaboration and focuses on all facets that support each student to achieve their highest potential. We made it a priority for family engagement specialists to receive the training and capacity to be part of the transformation to what family engagement looks like in each school and in their unique needs. We have FESs in all our schools implementing several programs ensuring school-based parent education, parent volunteering, and welcoming all cultures and their gifts. We will host the first of its kind conference in Ccsd for all professionals who help support the whole child and to build their capacity to collaborate better and bring innovative initiatives. Those initiatives align with the Board's focus to become a district where innovations and support for the students of today make sense and bring success in its outcome. We also have Family University, led by community partners and Ccsd staff, to inform and listen to several areas that are becoming frightening, but the reality of educating today's child. Those areas include discipline, mental health, food insecurity, health cost, Ccsd and community resources to address some of the issues which did not exist for yesterday's students. Still, they are at the forefront of the child's mind as they enter our schools today. A partnership is a force multiplier to advance progress toward ensuring that our families and students receive the education they deserve despite their language, economic status, heritage, and gender. With that at stake, we partnered with Great Athens and beyond to bring support and innovation as well as develop cross-functioning teams to achieve and sustain the goal of student success. We have over 135 partners, and they have been instrumental in some of the initiatives we have developed so far. We have added partners and made the collaboration with the existing ones more robust as we identified the gaps. We're just touching the surface of this well of wealth that surrounds us. The PowerPoint highlights some of the partners. They are now part of the Ccsd team and their contributions. Because learning does not happen in isolation, the strategy of whole child supports community schools, solid school-based family engagement, and other services become a wrapped-around approach to meet the whole child's needs. A whole child approach community school is a public school hub of its neighborhood. It unites families, educators, and community partners as an evidence-based strategy to promote equity and educational excellence for every child, and an approach that strengthens families and communities. I'm very, very grateful for the opportunity to build a team of game changers where understanding the whole child needs to go beyond the classroom. We all agree that a child without their basic needs met is not ready to learn. We focus on integrated student support, not only on the academic, but also on the non-academic need to bring initiatives that address those various conditions. Athens-Clarke County data shows that 22 to 32 of Clarke County is food insecure. We now have collaborated with Career Academy and UGA Campus Kitchen to bring a Made in Ccsd program. As students learn culinary arts skills, they will fill freezers in 4 of our schools, providing well-cooked meals to families and students. The program is ready to be launched. Mr. Melina, Campus Kitchen Professor Andy Biscaglia, and my team are prepared to collaborate with the new teacher upon hiring, as the team has drafted a very detailed program. Schools like Stroud, J.J. Harris, Alps, and Fowler Elementary were chosen based on data related to food insecurity and significant food desert areas. We have built meal centers in a few of our elementary schools, collaborating with the food bank and various Athens churches. Our goal is to double the number of meal centers in all schools, serve many more families and staff members, which is a reality that impacts not one, but all of us. J.J. Harris partnered with the UGA SNAP Ed State team to support families in quickly applying for WIC. Another crucial area that we were listening close to was safety routes to our schools. Students need to feel safe and confident that arriving at school is magical and not worry if the external conditions bring insecurity on the journey. We partner with Athens-Clarke County Traffic Engineering Division to develop a safety plan for all Chase Elementary families who walk, ride a bike, or drive their scholars to school. As a result of a meeting with Chase Elementary stakeholders, it was evident that safety was a priority that needed to be addressed. Today, this partnership has brought new speed bumps, new traffic lights, and new signage. We expanded this initiative to develop a plan to support also Alps Elementary and Clarke Middle School families. Currently, an audit is being done to find the best strategy to support students and their families. We also have been instrumental in the collaboration of creating a safe center with Athens Compass for students that reside at the Rolling Ridge and Broad Acres apartments to be dropped off safely for parent pickup. As we realize that the Athens-Clarke County school community holds 15.2 of a language other than English spoken at home, it is essential to bring representation and listen to their needs. Therefore, subgroups also achieve the same level of success as their peers. We made it a priority to bring English as a second language classes to support our parents. We collaborated with Title III to support Casa de Amistad to teach and share tools to parents to understand how to help their students and sometimes navigate a very unfriendly and confusing environment for some. Collaboration like the one with Ccsd Migrant Education Program and the Athens Immigrant Rights Coalition to host a Reunion del Pueblo on May 13, 2023, brings the focus on valuing all cultures and voices that is Ccsd. As I said, we are focused and driven to support every student's non-academic and academic needs. We continue to be intrinsic in collaboration with Stroud and Creature Conference in raising the literacy skills of the students in elementary schools. The data collected thus far by the Get Control program has shown exciting data based on the quasi-experimental design where Stroud is compared to 2 comparable control schools. The team is excited to see the needle move due to the collaboration and interventions. The Wellbeing Project will share more definite data at the end of the school year. This initiative with Creature Comforts and other local businesses is just the beginning as we continue to collaborate to expand this program to other schools in the county. We have strengthened the partnership with Books for Keeps, and today we got book distribution at every opportunity available to share a book with kids and share the love of reading. Let's not forget that school is also fun, magic, and a sense of belonging. We have gone to several neighborhoods to interact with parents and students as we provide support with food and services, and most importantly, a sense of partnership between the community and Ccsd. We have had 3 family fun days that bring more and more of our Ccsd families to enjoy a time at the park, learning about community support, enjoying each other and providing family time. We had over 400 families in attendance giving feedback on how much they look forward to the next event. The next Bridging the Gap will occur this Saturday, March 2nd at Pinewood. The next Family Fun Day will be held on April 22nd. We are coordinating the event directly with the participation of the Superintendent Student Council. Clark Middle has highlighted community members to get representation of different careers who inspires and motivates middle schoolers to understand the workforce of the 21st century. We have implemented programs in both high schools to address student engagement and improve a sense of belonging. Cedar 9th graders are working on a positive action group. It's called Bow Tie Thursday, as they build a sense of belonging and learning soft skills. The partnership is being created with Dick Ferguson's Men Clothing and Josh A. Banks to provide the clothing and also modeling for the students. There are 33 Cedar freshmen signed up for the program. The Department of Education released that by 2027, 70% of jobs will require education or training beyond high school. Therefore, we must provide opportunities for students with direct community involvement and partnership to what is beyond high school. Clark Center focuses on career fairs, career education, and a tailored job board based on students' feedback to empowering students to make choices that match their needs after graduation. The same programs are also getting ready to be launched at Cedar High School. A multicultural gardening program to bring the voices of all students and teach about different foods, agricultural knowledge, and how they impact them daily. A partnership with Athens Land Trust to bring agricultural expertise to students and continue to sustain a plan to address food insecurity through the freezer program. We also now offer first needs classes at one of our elementary school buildings, where parents learn a new profession and get certification in CNA, phlebotomy, and patient care. Stroud Elementary partnership with Innovator Healthcare and Dr. Allen was established to provide support in another area that is also a significant gap in our community: career development and employment opportunities. We have 8 parents who will graduate and be ready to secure a job in their area of focus. Today, the Georgia Department of Education has acknowledged the work and implementation with the fidelity of the whole child approach model, of course with a spark of Ccsd's flavor. It's still, most importantly, the beginning of a community school strategy that allows all stakeholders' voices to be heard, gaps addressed, and partnerships developed to move those barriers and hold hands with the common goal of building a solid community. There are so many things I wish I had time to share with the board. However, I have provided links for your review at the presentation's end. We also have letters of testimonials from principals who have seen the strategies impact at work in their schools since the support of this team. We understand there is much more to do and a lot more listening that needs to be done. But my team is not striving to be perfect, but striving to forge a purpose. I asked the board to look at all information provided about the work and what is ahead for us. If we forget the impact this work can have on our students and community, it ignores that every child deserves a champion to build relationships and share the belief that they have the potential to change the world. Collaborative effort teaches that a growth mindset is formed by understanding one's experiences and stories to overcome barriers. It is also approaching each school with a personalized lens in alignment with the strategic plan, which provides each student with the competence to tackle their needs and equip them with the tools necessary to be successful in the 21st century workforce. Your support is crucial and fundamental to bring more success to the Clark County neighborhoods and ultimately to all students. In closing, I ask that you have your eyes on the future and faith in what we can do together to support our students and families. We cannot march back to what it was, but what will be for the students we are committed to serving. As Amanda Gorman, a student with an auditory processing disorder and a speech impairment, would eloquently say, "For there is light, if only we are brave enough to see it, and if we are brave enough to be it." As yours truly once had a champion that believed that an ESOL student could overcome academic and language barriers, to be here today and share the story of this team with you. Now I said, as I step aside, and I would like my team to stand up. Thank you.
Thank you for that wonderful presentation. At this time, we'll take questions from our board members. Ms. Davis? You're the only one.
Okay, so I really, really appreciate this. This is very enlightening. I like this presentation. I really do. It speaks to exactly what we were looking for in terms of this engagement. The question that I had is on the parent workforce development. How is
Absolutely.
that working? Are we actually providing access to certification, or are we doing that through a partnership with Athens Tech, or how are we doing parent training?
Yeah, we are doing with a partnership with Innovations Healthcare and Dr. Allen. She goes to Stroud Elementary, and she does some of the classes there, and some of the practicum classes, they go to Innovator Healthcare and do that. And at the end, they do get assistance in taking the test and get the certification. And we also have a partner that gives them the uniforms and all the equipment that they need to get a job. As a matter of fact, some of them already had some interviews that they have been offered jobs at this time just based on this, this initiative that we are starting at Stroud. But the plan is to expand that. We started with 8 parents, but there are already parents asking when the next class is going to start.
I'll have some more questions about that, but thank you very much.
Absolutely.
That's very helpful.
Absolutely, anytime.
Other questions? Yes, Ms. Butts?
Okay, great presentation. I have a few questions.
Absolutely.
So my first question, I was looking at the Family University that was held last week. Were parents who don't have transportation, were we able to provide something for them to look online, or how are we able to include those parents?
Yes, every parent university that we have, we also have offered the parents a virtual access so they can watch online.
Okay. And the Bowtie Thursday, great program, looks like that's starting up. Will we also be able to offer that at Clark Central?
Yes, of course, we take a step at a time, and we, making sure that the programs we're putting in place is address gaps in each school. But when we see success in that specific school, then we start to reach out to other schools and making sure that implementation is start growing to all other schools with similar gaps.
Okay, and what grades do the students have to be? Is it 9th through 12th, or what grades?
For which initiative?
For the Bowtie Thursdays.
9th to 12, but usually they're concentrated right now on the 9th graders, because our goal is to making sure that we building the ninth grader to be role models, and as they go to 10th grade in the program, they're going to be role models to the ninth grader coming in. So we most concentrate right now on the ninth graders.
Okay. And I got just two more questions.
Absolutely.
With the workforce development, was that only at Howard B. Stroud, or are we offering that to all the schools?
You're talking about the parent classes?
Yes.
Right now that we are offering at Stroud. But once again, give me a little time to, extend those programs to other schools. But right now, Stroud is the only school that is offering that.
Okay. And I had an email come through about the powwow that they're having at Clark Central. We are a partnership with them. Clark County School District is a partnership with the powwow. And I had a parent to ask me, she didn't see it on any of her emails or on the Clark County School District website. So if we're partnering with different organizations, are the flyers on our website as well, or how does parents know about what's coming up?
I apologize, however, I do not know any powwow initiative that is coming from my office.
Okay.
However, all initiative that comes from my office are advertised on the website, are given to us, the family engagement specialists that send home through the Friday folder or dojo. So we try to advertise as much as possible. And when we go also to visit neighborhoods through the Bridging the Gap, we also bring flyers and information of all the initiatives that we have in place. However, powwow is not one that I'm aware of.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any? Yes, Ms. Davis.
Are you in all of our schools now?
Are you asking if we have community school organizer in all schools?
Yes.
No, we still have the 7 schools that they are the cohort for the Department of Education. However, my team do support schools when they have initiatives or when we have something that is clearly a benefit to students. They collaborate with the other schools that do not house a community school organizer.
So we do expect to see some results as a result of this in terms of academic achievement and all of those things. And so we'll be looking at these 7 pilot schools. And then how long after this before we'll get to the other schools?
That is something I think that is up to the board and the superintendent to make those decisions. However, I do know that right now we are going to receive some accolades from the state of Georgia in April, end of April, beginning of May, that the 7 cohort schools have implemented with fidelity the whole child support strategy. And we are seeing some differences and some needles move in the direction that we'd like to see that directly impact kids and families.
So this isn't new. So this is exactly what I said when you presented it.
Mm-hmm.
And we were going to do the 7 and then that would leave the other 14 in that situation where we still have a lot of work to do. So I'm going to thank you profusely for the work that you've done.
Absolutely.
And I will speak again to the equity of all of our children.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
That's our focus. Thank you.
I have just one quick question, and then it's very quick, though.
No, you're fine.
So when the 7 schools that are sort of part of this pilot program, as you're assessing these schools, and I saw all of the reports that you've done per school, and they're wonderful. I do wonder if there's a focus on metrics that can be sort of paid very close attention to, because I see all the bench lines in those reports, but I'm not sure I saw in any of those reports like where progress is being made and to what level.
Absolutely. I think that I would probably have those metrics for at the end of the school year, since we started, a lot of the implementation of the initiatives in the beginning of the school year. We need some time to make sure that we are, collecting data to make sure that we have those results for you.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you for that. Did you have a question? I'm sorry, Dr. Yeager.
It's okay, I just have a comment. I heard on the radio coming over here a news report about a new report, and I was trying to find it, and I find it, I'll send it to you, about how absenteeism was being positively improved through family visits, which I wonder in terms of a metric, if that's one of the metrics we will see improving with the 7 schools that you've been working so hard in. I assume that's one of the things you're measuring as a way of progress. And there's that good evidence that it helps. So what you're doing has been shown to improve at least absenteeism.
Yes.
Thank you for your great work.
Oh, thank you.
Are there any more questions before we move on?
Yeah, I'll just follow up and echo Dr. Yeager and others to thank you for the work that you all are doing in our schools. I do think there's this gap between families being able to be connected in a way that fits them, right? Like that middle place. With the metrics and things like that, one of the things I'm thinking about, I'm sort of thinking out loud too, as we go through strategic planning. I think that will hopefully help us as well. You know, we'll have like a big picture, but then figure out like, what are those things we are expecting to see? Because I wouldn't, you know, I would not expect family engagement programs to be like directly responsible, let's just say, for reading scores going up. Now, that is one of the correlations that we would want to make at some point, but, you know, really looking at ways that we engage families, and hopefully that engagement then leads to other academic improvements. So I guess I'm just thinking out loud that hopefully as we revisit our strategic plan, we'll be able to see where all of these different parts fit, and then what the metrics are for each respective organization or part or system.
Thank you for that comment. And to answer your question, Ms. Butts, the powwow is being sponsored by the Human Relations Council that will take place next weekend. That's Ms. Hattie, Dr. Hattie Lawson, who's leading that event. Okay.
Are those things on, I know we have I think we have a district calendar. Are those activities either on the calendar, or might they be placed, or is that like a huge undertaking, like as different things and events? From what I've been able to tell from the reports, there are a lot of different things that are happening in schools based on what those needs are.
Yes.
And so is that something that, you know, we may be able to point parents to say, okay, well, at least, you know, sometimes kids don't bring things home. Sometimes parents get a lot of emails and we don't see them. So is there something we can point parents to say, here is the master calendar, you know, checking it daily or weekly or what have you?
Okay, and that's, you're asking concerning?
Events, yeah, like any family engagement events, because I think that's what I heard in your question, Ms. Butts, is that, you know, how do we be sure, to the extent possible,
Absolutely.
that parents, you know, that parents know what's happening?
And of course, the family engagement specialists from each school, if there is an initiative that's happening at that specific school, they are putting that information out. I also send a lot of information to Dr. Moore, and she puts on the newsletter as well. And I also put on the e-update for the principals to have access to that. So I try as much as possible. But as we all know, this is a mindset shift. Collaboration and family engagement is something that happens as we all as a tribe get together and make sure that we're shifting the mindset of the importance of parents and community being involved. So it's happening, but you know, it's taking a little while, but I do foresee a lot of good signs that shows that we're on the right track.
Yes, Ms. Butts.
I have one more question. I guess my question is for you, Dr. Hooker.
Yes.
With the event that's coming next weekend, how will the students know? Because I've had emails and calls of parents not knowing about the event. So will it be on our district website?
If I'm not mistaken, and correct me, Ms. Palmer, this was an event that Ms. Lawson initiated. This was not through the school system. Okay. This is something through her program that she wanted to connect with the students. This was sponsored by her, not by the district.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Thank you so much for your presentation.
You're welcome. Thank you all.
All right.
I do have just a quick question. The 135, I think, partners that were listed in the presentation.
Yes.
Is there a place, I know we listed the church partners, we listed a few other partners. Do we have that anywhere?
Yes,
like,
I do
those
have a
partners?
document, Alex, Mr. Borges and us, we have a document that shows every partner we have and the MOUs that are coming within. I can be more than happy to share the document with
If
you.
you would share that with Ms. Palmer, we'll make sure to put that out on Friday's update.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you so much.
May I make one more comment?
Yeah, sure.
I thoroughly enjoyed my visit to, where was that? The Early Learning Center on the east side with the readathon that your group coordinated. And the children gave me so much love, I'm full for the rest of the month. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much for sharing that and for those opportunities as well. We will move forward to item C. This is the discussion of the mall TAD amended agreement. We have individuals that will contribute to the conversation. So we have our developers, our mayor, and then Dr. Anderson and Ms. Davis will share some additional perspectives.
Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Scott Haynes. I'm a landscape architect, and I work for W&A Engineering. That's a firm that is merely 5 minutes from here, over on Anita Street. With me tonight is Mr. John Williams, who is the founding principal of our firm, Mr. Mark Jennings, who's part of the development team. On the line, I believe we have Brian Liu, who is another member of the development team, Kenneth Neighbors, and Isaac Ulima, who are both members of our legal counsel. I want to thank you all for your time tonight to let us come and share this information with you. I'm going to cover the zoning-related and plan-related items, and then I'll turn the mic over to John, who will talk more about the Community Benefits Agreement and also the Intergovernment Agreement Amendment. I'd like to start by talking about the timeline so you get a picture of where we've been. This timeline represents primarily the zoning actions that have occurred. The initial planning for this development began in early 2001 under a prior consultant. The initial plan development submission was put in at the end of 2021. I believe that was in December of 2021. This type of zoning item has to go before the Planning Commission twice, the first of which was in February of 22, and then it went back in April of 22. At that point, it was tabled due to significant comment that was received by the planning staff and also the Planning Commission. A month later, in May, the development team scrapped that plan, and they contracted with us to create a new plan. When I say they scrapped it, they started completely from scratch, started over. We went to the Planning Commission shortly thereafter and requested a table for several months that would give us time to redevelop the plan. As you can see on the timeline before you, that period between the April meeting and when we went back in October was about 5 months. Over those 5 months, we had over 20 meetings with staff and stakeholders and countless email correspondence. Those emails included interactions with planning staff and ACC Public Works and Traffic, Leisure Services, Transit and Transportation. We also met with area commissioners, Economic Development in the manager's office, and some of the executives from the Clark County School District, and also some area residents. We then came back with a master plan and submitted in October of 22, which took us to a Planning Commission meeting in December of 22, where we received unanimous approval for that plan. Before I get to that plan, I would like to show the plan that was before it. We've termed this the Lego plan, as you can likely see in the graphic. This plan relied primarily on taking new developments and just placing them essentially in the existing parking lot of the mall, utilizing as much existing infrastructure as possible. It did not have the benefits of the TAD that the plan you'll see in a minute. So it was primarily trying to work with what was there today. As you can see on the left side, there is a list of 16 comments. These were comments that were received from staff and Planning Commission. They talked about things like wanting to consolidate curb cuts, add trees and sidewalks, use roundabouts at the Maryland Farmer intersection, consider additional parking structures, include a transit transfer station, create better connectivity of with a multi-use path, and add sidewalks on Huntington Road. This is a exhibit showing the existing mall as it is today. Our plan contemplates keeping what is in green and removing what is in red. Note that Belk is part of the remaining portion of the building, and they have rights of approval for the redevelopment plan. Belk is the green portion that is sticking out south from that larger green portion in the center. They also have a say in things like maintaining view corridors and the use of additional surface parking requirements. So here is our proposed plan. This is based off things that we heard from staff and comments from the Planning Commission. They said things like they wanted to see a grid style of development. They used the term auxiliary downtown. They wanted us to incorporate surrounding areas to avoid pod type development. They expressed the need for sidewalk along Huntington Road, which is the road on the right side of the plan, in addition to overall pedestrian improvements. They wanted to see the incorporation of a transit station, and they wanted to see enhanced roadway infrastructure such as traffic circles to aid in the entering and exiting of traffic. In an effort to weave this project into the fabric of the surrounding neighborhood, we considered both improving connections to the surrounding community and providing a proper transition of intensities between the edges and center of the project. We eliminated the section of Ring Road that is parallel to Huntington and placed townhomes along that frontage. This not only engages Huntington, but also offers a good transition of use between the existing single family on Huntington and the mixed-use core of the potential development. On the opposite side of the project, we looked at ways to encourage future interconnectivity. The first was to provide a curb cut at the intersection between Racetrack and Academia. So in the future, a connection could be made through those properties to Crane Drive and potentially beyond to Cleveland Road. North of this, on that same stretch of road, we provided an additional connection point to allow the future connection to Meadowland property in case that property was to be redeveloped and it could be then accessed into the mall plan proper. We took the recommendation to incorporate traffic circles into the project. We did this not only at the Maryland Farmer intersection, which is the top left roundabout you see on the plan, but also at the Huntington Road intersection, which is completely opposite in the southern eastern portion of the property. And the results of our TIA, which is a traffic impact analysis, showed that these roundabouts would function quite well. As you can see, the roundabouts connect the project to a street grid network. This grid was determined by balancing what was to remain of the mall, including some parking that was required for Belk. Topographical challenges were also a big consideration, as well as the implementation of the center green. This center green is the heart of the project. It is what we see as one, if not potentially the most significant draw to the project. We envision this space to be activated with trees and landscape to create a park-like environment. We are contemplating the use of synthetic turf in some of these areas so that the space is consistent throughout the seasons and much more resistant to the impacts of use. We plan on including other amenity features, such as the band shell you can see just north in the top of the green, it's a small red dot. And in general, we see this area as being programmed for a space of gathering and play. On the other end of the green, we are showing stormwater quality treatment areas. This is on both the north and south side of the green. We see these spaces as opportunities to amenitize stormwater infrastructure. These areas will be designed for infiltration and will draw down quickly after a rain event. In dry conditions, they will serve as expansion of the center green. As you can see from the plan, we have placed higher intensity uses around the center green and transitioned out through multifamily and then single-family townhomes. We have placed the transit station in the southwest corner of the site to facilitate bus traffic into and out of the project. There are also 3 additional bus stops distributed around the site. We recognize that we should do all we can to depart from the existing auto-centric nature of the mall. We have tried to eliminate surface parking lots where possible, but it is difficult to do entirely. Case in point is Belk. Belk has the right of refusal, as mentioned, in their lease that gives them veto power over changes to the site. One of their requirements was to maintain the parking field and a certain number of surface spaces directly in front of their store. So although that lot will need to stay, it has been upgraded to ACC design standards, which includes things like additional parking lot trees. In other parts of the site, we were able to remove impervious surface lots. The result of this is around 19 acres of impervious cover converted to pervious ground. To offset the loss of the surface lots, we have planned for parking decks in the multifamily developments to be overparked so that the additional parking can be used for visitors to the site. This slide shows us the pedestrian infrastructure we're proposing. Of course, one of the things needed to get away from cars is a robust pedestrian infrastructure. We worked with Leisure Services and other departments in the design of this. Following their recommendation, we designed a 12-foot wide multi-use path in place of bike lanes. As you can see, this multi-use path circles the site and makes connections from the project to the adjoining community. The total length of this path is just below 1.5 miles. This is in addition to the regular sidewalks shown in blue. The path also provides a rectangular rapid flashing beacons, or RRFBs, at all roundabout crossings. You may be familiar with these from around town. These are what signals them the pedestrian is in a crosswalk to other motorists in vehicles. Moving to stormwater, it may surprise you to find that there is really no stormwater present on the site today. In 2018, a study was produced by Arcadis for ACC that looked at watershed management and a plan for the Middle Oconee River. One of the main solutions provided in that study was to create a stormwater management facility on this site. As you can see from the plan, the center pie graph shows the Lego plan and what it achieved through conversion of pervious to impervious, or impervious to pervious. Our plan has bettered that by about 6%. Overall, this plan reduces, as I mentioned before, about 19 acres of parking lot that's being converted to land that will now take rainwater. Reducing impervious cover is also beneficial in combating heat element effect, but this is especially true when paired with a healthy canopy of shade trees. The site really has very little in the way of existing canopy relative to its size, and what is existing does very little to shade the site. Given the low quality and quantity of existing material, nearly all of the requirement for tree management will be made through new plantings, both individual trees and pockets of reforestation. We estimate around 200 trees will need to be removed from the existing parking areas. These will be replaced and replanted throughout the site with 1,000 new trees, netting about 800 new trees in total. This last slide shows you our phasing. We are planning for a 2-part first phase. This is because of the need to have continuous construction while the mall remains open. This is largely due because Belk has to remain in service, as do many of the other tenants. So while one portion of the site will remain secured for patrons, while the other side is being redeveloped. After that is completed, the newly constructed side will support patronage while the remaining first phase is completed. As you can see, the majority of the project will be constructed within this first phase. This includes nearly all of the road network, infrastructure, and commercial space. It will also include roughly half of the multifamily and single-family units. We have shown the remainder of the project to be constructed in 2 to 3 additional phases. I would like to now turn the podium over to John, who will speak to you about the Community Benefits Agreement and the additions to the intergovernmental agreement.
Thank you, Scott. I appreciate the opportunity to be before you tonight, members of the Board of Education. We have had a long process here. As you heard Scott say, we've been going back to 2021 with this. And just to give you some idea of the difficulty of this process, the plan development is one key component. It assures the community that what we say is going to be built will be built. We can't change the plan development without going back before the Board of Commissioners once they cast a vote on it. Paired with that is the TAD vehicle, and that vehicle comes with a community benefits agreement. So we submitted our TAD application back in October of this year, and while the plan development was working its way through the process, staff started reviewing our TAD application. And then in December of this year, we started putting together the community benefits agreement. Starting in January, you can see from this chart how many community open meetings we've had. There's a TAD advisory committee that met 3 times. The MARC committee is slated to have, I think, 5 meetings, maybe 6 before we're done, actually. And then we'll have another meeting at the Board of Commissioners for the final vote next Tuesday. Want to move forward to talk a little bit about TADs in general. You guys, I know, received a presentation on it. First of all, I want to thank the Board of Education for being willing to participate in the Mall TAD district. Your support here is obviously critical to the success of this project. We talk about the numbers of this project, and they are big numbers. This is a 75-acre project that when it's completed will probably be valued north of $650 million. We are asking for $189 million of participation for the TAD. And as I've been talking throughout the community on multiple occasions, people continually ask me where that money's coming from. Is it coming out of our tax dollars? And the answer to that question is no, it's not coming out of our existing tax dollars. Only the dollars created by this project, in addition to the current taxes of this project, are what we get back as reimbursable expenses. The developers front 100% of the cost of development up front and will get paid back over a 30-year time period as the increment on the property increases. Just for clarity's sake, when we talk, this was part of an original presentation I believe that the county received. Area 1 you see on this diagram is the existing mall taxes that are paid. Its current value is somewhere around $25 million. You will still continue to get that tax revenue into the tax digest just like you normally would. Area 2 represents the increment increase of the mall, and that is the only dollars that we will have access to when we submit a requisition request to be reimbursed for our project. Area 3 represents an area once we get to the end of the TAD, which for us, there are 2 triggers. As soon as we get to $189 million, the TAD ends. If that's 27 years, it's 27 years. If it's 30 years, it's 30 years. But it's also, we can't collect more than 29% of the project value. So we put in multiple triggers to ensure that you guys were going to get what we're telling you you're going to get. Once we get to the end of the TAD, all the dollars generated by this project go back into the regular tax digest. But there's a piece here too that is very worth mentioning, and it's often used in redevelopment language where it's called the halo effect. I mean, yes, for 30 years we will get the additional increment generated by the mall, but everything around it will begin to redevelopment. Everything around it will be lifted up, whether that's the value of the houses that have pedestrian access that can walk to this new space, or a commercial area, say where Best Buy was at one time, that gets redeveloped as a result of our development. Those taxes that are generated go back into the general fund and have access as you would normally. I want to move on and talk a little bit about the community benefits. And again, we hear a lot about the cost, but just to simplify it greatly, we went through this entire community process to generate a plan that we believed could be permitted through the county, that the county would accept. It was in compliance with the future land use plan that checked all the boxes that we were asked to check. Some of them Scott mentioned before, and this is where we're talking about the affordable housing. This is where we're talking about the transit station. And so once we got that plan finished, we priced it. We had Balfour Beatty price the plan, essentially, and put a dollar cost on that plan. The dollars that we're asking for to be reimbursed from the TAD was simply solving for the equation of the dollars that we had to have to build this plan. Now, the developer will get a rate of return on their money. That rate of return has been analyzed by the county's finance financial experts, and I know that at least the county commissioners received an email saying that the return on their investment was appropriate for the size and scale of a project like this. In other words, if we don't have this $189 million coming in the income stream of this project, it is not possible to build this project as it was designed, as it was conceptualized by all the community input that we had. So just to run down a few of the benefits that we have on this project right now. We have 4.5 acres of privately maintained but public green space. We have 1.5 miles of 12-foot wide multi-use pathways. We have a reduction of 20 acres of impervious surface, which is worth noting here that the reason we're able to reduce the impervious surface is because we're building vertically. We're adding parking structures and parking decks instead of surface parking. Those parking structures cost $30,000 a space to build. The existing parking that was out there, as you saw in the first kind of Lego plan, doesn't cost anything to build. So you can see as we build vertically, the cost of the plan increases. We've added 800 new trees. We've added a transit station. So the transit station specifically is a part of the $189 million ask. The county will retain the dollars to build the transit station. We will gift them the land in the form of a lease for 99 years for the transit station to be built on, and they will use TAD dollars to build the transit station as they're generated. We have, and this one is new, as Dr. Anderson said, one of the asks that came out of the MARC committee was that we set aside space to be capped at a much lower reduced rent, equal to that Athens-Clarke County Police Department's paying today for minority-owned businesses. And the developers have agreed to do that. So we'll set aside over 14,000 square foot of space, retail office space, to be utilized by minority-owned businesses for the period of the TAD, for the 30 years. And then also new this go around, we had originally said we were going to do 10% of the multifamily units, which is 99 units, at 80% of AMI. The MARC committee requested that we go to 60%, and we have come to an agreement where we will do 60% of AMI for 10% of the units for a 20-year time period for this project versus the 80 that was originally proposed. We have sustainable stormwater management and infrastructure. As Scott said, we know that it's going to help the Middle Oconee River. We have a youth development center for the Boys and Girls Club that's 6,100 square feet that receives free rent, essentially $100 a year for a 30-year period of time. Also new tonight is the establishment of an internship program in concert with your school district, as was asked, and we're happy to provide that. We were also asked after we submitted our application, were we willing to add a daycare or early learning or education center rent-free for the life of the TAD, and we agreed to do that. Now, this is just one example, just to tell you the dollars that we're talking about. That 4,000 square foot daycare center, rent-free for 30 years, equates to about $3.7 million as an adjustment to the pro forma. So when these things are asked for, it substantially changes the dynamics of the deal. We have agreed to continued use for the police substation and reduced and frozen rent. That was an additional $4.7 million. You'll see a halo effect for the surrounding areas and commercial to lift up the tax base. We've improved traffic circulation through roundabouts and improved roadway design in the area. We've worked with the Georgia Department of Transportation because they already have plans to improve the Atlanta Highway corridor, and we know traffic is a concern. So our plan takes into account their plans and works and functions well with those. We've agreed to contribute $50,000 to Athens-Clarke County for an off-site sidewalk to connect the neighborhoods that are north of the mall so that pedestrians can walk to this activated area and space. Our analysts that we hired to evaluate the economic impact of this project believe that it will create over 1,000 new jobs. They also believe that it will generate $100 million in retail sales, which will add an additional $4 million of revenue to the county. And it will have a physical impact for this region of nearly $5 billion over the 30-year period of time when it's built out as this plan calls for. So we believe the public benefit metric has been met. We believe that this is going to be an incredibly transformational plan that will lift up the entire west side of Athens-Clarke County. So why are we here before you tonight? In 2020, when the city envisioned TAD districts and the school district agreed to participate in the Mall-TAD district, you signed an intergovernmental agreement at that time with the city, an IGA. At that time, the IGA was written to sunset in 20 years. Not 20 years from when a TAD was started, but 20 years from when you signed the IGA. So I believe there's 17 years left on it now. This project, in order for us to generate the $189 million, in order for us to have the dollars to be able to go finance this project in the private sector, the TAD has to run for 30 years. So the amendment to the IGA that we're asking you to consider is to extend that time frame to 2053, which will give the 30-year horizon that we need. For this TAD only, and I say this TAD, not this TAD district, I believe that this intergovernmental agreement, and Mr. Pruitt can correct me if I'm wrong, is specific to the mall TAD. I would also like to thank Michael Pruitt. I've known Michael for 20 plus years since I've been working in this community. He and I have worked together many times. As soon as I got involved in the project, and as soon as we started talking about the TADs, I contacted Michael. He and I have had multiple conversations and made great strides in making sure that the school board not only gets what they need, but are protected throughout the life of the TAD. Our development team has agreed to full indemnity that Michael thought was necessary. And Michael's been instrumental in helping us draft not only the IGA, but the 100-page community benefits document that Ms. Davis and Dr. Anderson have been working through very diligently with us over the last several months. We believe that document now includes everything that's been asked for of us. Certainly, there will be people that say along the way, you should have done this, you could have got more, but at the end of the day, I want to just please remember that finances for projects like this is a math equation, and we are at the point now where any more give on our side, we just don't have room for. So the 60% of AMI, 10% of the units was the final piece of the puzzle that we hope will get this kind of over the edge, so to speak. I'm happy to answer any questions you have. I know this is the first time you guys have seen a full presentation of this, although it has been out kind of online and in the public for quite some time. And I'm sure you probably have some questions. Also happy to respond to anything that Dr. Anderson and Ms. Davis may have to say from their regard.
Just want to make sure I heard you correctly. 60% AMI over, on 10% over 20 years, is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Can we hold off questions until Mayor Gertz has had a chance to present? Is that okay?
We're holding off questions until the mayor has spoken, and then, because there may be questions asked of him as well. Thank you.
Good evening, board members. Dr. Hooker, I really appreciate you letting me take the long journey from City Hall over to this space to have a couple minutes together. I think you've seen the bulk of the presentation and you understand the broad community benefits. Certainly this has been an iterative process. I think Dr. Anderson and Ms. Davis would attest that we've had a lot of robust conversation and that the project has evolved because of their work. I again want to thank Mike Pruitt. He's been a key part of the core advisory team that's made sure that the legal contours of this make sense for everyone. I'll share with all of you, often I'm asked, how do I connect the work I did here in the district for 20 years, working with teenagers, with the work I do now in the unified government? And I often point to a report that came out from the National Superintendent's Roundtable in 2015 called the Iceberg Effect. And what that international study found is that about 30% of the outcomes of young people are derived from the brick and mortar buildings that you all support every day. And about another third are derived from what happens in those families. But that last third is based on the health of the community that surrounds those young people. And that's what this project is all about, is creating a healthy environment for the families that we all diligently support every day. And so this is, of course, an outward-facing project. It's one that's connected to those families that live on Cleveland Road and in the neighborhoods off Huntington Drive, and through transit to those families all the way out to Stonehenge on the far west side of town. Because we want a vibrant place for our young people to grow up in and for their families to find work in. Unfortunately, we as a community can see the countervailing model. You only have to look as far as the former Kmart property on the east side of town to see what's effectively a dead zone in the community that's not providing accessible employment and not providing livelihood to the people we all care so dearly about. This project does exactly that. And so I'm asking, prior to our vote that has to happen by ordinance this Tuesday, the 7th, for your confirmation of that IGA. And I'm here for any questions that you may have. Again, thank you so much for your time.
I thank you, Mr. Mayor, for your presentation. So at this time, we'll take questions from our board members. Dr. Anderson, followed by Mr. Tim Denson.
Okay. I don't really have a question. I just have like just a summary of what Ms. Davis and I have done at the Marks, or have sat in on and contributed in the Mark, just so you see how we got to that list of community benefits. It was a really long road to get to all of those bulleted items up there on the top, leading up to Monday's meeting, where we did get a final, well, sort of final draft of the CBA, and continue to ask and continue to push back on some of the items to strengthen the language so that there were some benefits that were measurable, that had potential metrics attached to them, that they will potentially, if this is approved, submit annual reports to the MARC, and the MARC with representation from the Board of Education as well as ACC will continue to evaluate that this work is getting done and that it meets the letter of the CBA. So there's going to be, over the 30-year period, continued sort of, not oversight necessarily, but ensuring that all of those bulleted items, that the developer is meeting those requests that we made. So I do feel confident in the strengthening of the language for all of the items that were, specifically the ones that were geared towards the district. And I guess Ms. Davis can let us know how she feels. But from a personal perspective, I think if we read the new CBA now, along with the amendments to the IGA, I think it's in a good place. And that's just my personal opinion.
Ms. Davis, if you want to give your point of view, and then we'll move forward to Mr. Denson.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. I'm excited that you came and brought this presentation to the full board. It's really nice to see it condensed in just a few minutes presentation instead of dragging it out over and over again. I love what is happening in that space. I think that it is very much community and family friendly from my perspective. And I am pleased that we got here finally. And I think everyone involved in this project has absolutely proclaimed that we've never done anything like this before. And so we're definitely plowing a lot of new ground, but I think, and I appreciate the work and the effort from the development team as well as our team. And I don't know how many times we can say it, Mike, but Mike Pruitt really has stepped up and helped us understand what we were doing. He has definitely taken care of any exposure that the district has once this money is raised, because to have us involved in anything beyond just the verifications and receiving the reports would require us to spend money. And so I think it's just a beautiful recommendation that he has for us on the IGA. I don't think I've heard anything that materially changes what you have submitted to us, and if it has, I'd ask you to please clarify that now. But I fully support and recommend and ask that you support this recommendation for the IGA to be extended to 30 years. I think that's it.
Thank you. Mr. Denton?
Thank you, sir. Yeah, first just want to say thank you to Dr. Anderson and Ms. Davis for representing us so well, and I think also I agree getting together a good community benefits agreement that's going to help in Mr. Pruitt for help oversee that process too. I did have one question that I'll just throw to this crowd over here, whoever sees best to answer it. On the inclusionary housing provision, and I'm very happy to see it lowered to 60% AMI. Is that also going to be meeting the other requirements of the inclusionary zoning ordinance the county has, meaning that all of the housing has to be up at the same quality and such as all the other units?
The short answer, Mr. Denson, is yes. We modeled the total project after all the applicable Athens-Clarke County ordinances. In fact, this actually exceeds the ordinance greatly from the standpoint that we could have increased the density a lot more. We did not increase the density because we simply were kind of capped out at what we felt like the market was based on the number of units we were including. But just a little quick rundown for those that may not be familiar with the ordinance. Basically says that we have to deliver the units in concert with the unit mix that we have other units. So if we have 20% one-bedroom units, we have to have 20% inclusionary units. They have to be the same size. The bedrooms, the bathrooms have to be the same size. If we put granite countertops in one of them, we got to put granite countertops in the other one. Identical, right? So that is a great point as to why you have to have this public-private partnership and these TADs to be able to supplement the cost of building those units when we're talking about leasing them here, and then now we're running the rents at 60% of AMI, which I believe is capped at 25%. I would also like to thank the mayor for their hard work on that inclusionary ordinance, but they didn't stop there. They, the Housing and Community Development Department, I believe that's right, Mayor, will be charged with monitoring this throughout the course of time. So we'll be submitting reports to them on an annual basis. They can audit. I've been in communication with Andrew Saunders, who heads that department up, and we know what they're going to be looking for and kind of checking the box on. So not only will there be continued oversight through the report that will be submitted annually from the development team about the overall project, we'll also be working with that county department with oversight of the affordable housing.
Okay. Thank you. And with that, I will agree with Ms. Davis. I think this is about as good as we're really going to get, and I appreciate all the work that's been going into it, and I look forward to supporting those.
Other board members?
I had a couple of follow-up questions, and I think this information may be information that I've either seen and can't remember. But with I think it was mentioned 14,000 square feet for minority businesses.
I believe it's 14,500, yes, ma'am.
Okay. Can you explain what does that does it mean that amount will be set aside for minority businesses, and those businesses will still be responsible for the lease, correct?
Well, no. Well, yes, they will be responsible for the lease, but I believe the current lease rate is on the mark on the police is $12 a foot, or 13. Okay, so it was modeled. What I believe this was Dr. Anderson's recommendation, and so the way this came to pass is that currently Athens-Clarke County leases space in the mall for the police station and for their gym activity center. That lease rate today is somewhere between $12 and $14 a square foot. I don't have the exact number, but it's below market. To give you some example, the retail office lease rate out here will be somewhere probably between $20 and $30 a square foot, depending on the space and where you're at. So the ask from Dr. Anderson was, would we be willing to set aside the same amount of space, it's actually 14,490 square feet, to be leased by minorities at the rate that matches what the ACCPD rate is, because we agreed to freeze their rate for the 30-year term, and we're also going to do the same for the minority. So it's not just setting aside and having the ability to access the space. It's actually probably it's $4.7 million essentially over a 30-year time period if this space gets filled up and holds activation in the time frame. The only caveat that we had to that when we were asked for it is that, I think we we asked for a 3-year period of time, and if it didn't lease in that 3-year period of time, we would be able to lease it to market rate because we just didn't want empty space sitting there. And then by the same token, if a business occupies it and then it's vacated and we left a full year's time to release it to another minority-owned business. And again, if it didn't release in a full year, then we could lease it at retail rates. That was a lot of words there.
Yeah. No, that's helpful, but that also made me think of something else. With the project, like this full, like from what I understand, it's a lot of different phases and things that are well beyond my area of expertise. But with the services that are going to be provided, like the contractors and things like that, is there a place for minority businesses to assure that local and minority businesses, that those contracts are available to them, and that there's some form of like recruitment that is happening for our local minority businesses? So not just necessarily to occupy the space.
Yes, ma'am.
But to also really be included and not excluded from those contracts.
Again, I believe this was a suggestion by Dr. Anderson and Ms. Davis that we look at doing that. It's something that I've done on other projects across the country as well. There's language in today's version of the community benefits analysis. I don't know if you guys have gotten that yet, but if you hadn't, it should be coming with these changes. That talks about and speaks to specifically that construction period where we'll be doing advertising, we'll be having some job fairs, we'll be soliciting bids from those minority contractors that are qualified and are able to produce the workmanship quality and at the price that needs to be produced. So it's not a set aside, so to speak, in the form of like a percentage, but it is an engagement with the community to ensure that everybody that is qualified to do business out there has the opportunity to submit and be selected.
Okay. Now I just have a couple more questions, if that's okay with the board. Or if, it was mentioned that like with some of the changes that have been like made, like the updates to the community benefits agreement, that from my understanding we'll be receiving, that there's not a lot more room for any more give, and that when these things change, that the dynamics, it sort of shifts the dynamics of the deal. What specifically, like what types of shifts are we talking about? Like just overall costs?
So big picture, like we said, we're not getting a pot of money up front to go out and help us finance this project. So this project has to stand on its own 2 legs from a private banking perspective. Whether we go out and get dollars from private equity or conventional banking or whatever it is, they're going to look at the entire pro forma of the project over the period of time. And there has to be enough rate of return for the investor, for the lenders to feel comfortable to lend on this project, to take the risk on this project. So when I say that it changes the metrics, what it's changing really is the rate of return on the project. And once you fall below a certain level, certain ROI, you just simply can't finance the deal. I mean, you can't go out and borrow the money to build the project. They won't take a chance on it. They won't risk anything on it. And then you're also eroding the return for the investors that are taking all the risk to be able to go forward and build this project. So since we submitted the application, just to give you some idea, now this is from memory, so I would say don't quote me on this, but I feel like everything is quoted at this microphone. So I believe since we started the process, when we submitted our original application, there's been over $15 million added to the cost of the project that we have given, maybe closer to 18. So we had a pro forma that worked, that we knew we could go get financed, and we were able to shift and move and change and try to figure out how to make it work with this additional $18 million of cost. But for lack of a better word, I mean, we're out of rope. I mean, we don't have anywhere else to go. We don't have any, at this point in time, every time you push on this side, something comes out on the other. So, I mean, and remember, we're operating with this binding site plan. So you can't just say, well, why don't you just take off of this that costs less? Or why don't you just change this that, you know, to lower the cost so I can do more of this? Because that plan that you see up there has got to be built exactly like that. And all these proffers have to be done in the community benefits analysis, just like we've laid out that we're going to do them. So there's just no more room to be able to have a marketable, financeable project.
Thank you. And my last question, I don't know if this is for Dr. Anderson or maybe Mr. Pruitt and Ms. Davis. I want to be sure I'm understanding. The MARC committee, the Board of Education will not have members on that committee, or we will? We will actually have.
So I'll answer that, but then if Mr. Pruitt has a response that is different. So there's two sort of processes that that the MARC is going to be involved with moving forward. And one is the verification agent that would handle verifying all the reimbursable receipts that the developer submits. Well, if there's an appeal, if the developer, you know, submits a complaint that those receipts should have been accepted, there'll be an appeal process. That will go through the MARC. However, the Board of Education will not be involved with that process, correct?
Can I stop you there? I think it does not go through the MARC. It goes directly to the mayor and commission.
Exactly.
Yeah. I think Mr. Pruitt is correct. In the latest version of the CBA, because of the request to remove the school board from that verification agent process, there wasn't any reason to send it to the MARC. We just went straight to the Board of Commissioners for the appeal process for verification of payments and reimbursables.
And that goes back to the liability issue. To make a long story short, it seems it's unavoidable that whoever participates in that appeal from the verification agent's determination is going to have some legal exposure potentially. And the way to remove that exposure for the school district is not to participate in that process. So it will be totally up to the mayor and commission, meaning Athens-Clarke Unified Government of Athens-Clarke County bears that risk.
And let me also say that we definitely still will have a MARC because the mall TAD is just a part of the TAD. There are other properties involved in the TAD, and we'll still have to go through that approval process for other applicants that bring projects for the TAD.
That's correct.
Ms. Davis is exactly right. And of course, the MARC will also receive those annual audits of productivity as well.
And so this particular project, however, that the school district is being asked to sort of forego the increases on tax revenue for that amount of years, we won't have really a part of that verification process. And so what I hear you saying is the only way for us to have a part is to also be liable?
Financial, yes.
And let me just clarify one thing you said, because you're not a part of the verification. The MARC, it was never intended that the MARC be a part of the verification process. We are hiring and paying for, that's one of the additions of cost, a verification agent that'll be paid for by the developer. And that person we will submit a requisition request to pay us back for infrastructure that we've put in. That person will review that request and approve it or not approve it. We assume they're going to, but there's $430 million worth of qualified reimbursable expenses on this job. So I don't think this is a pretty rare case, but if they said, for example, no, we're not going to pay for that storm drain pipe, the developer says we believe it's a qualified expense, then there's an appeal process that's triggered under the CBA. That's the only thing we're talking about the school board not being a part of, is the appeal of the verification process. But the money is already in the bank, so to speak, in the pot is sitting over there. and we will have performed all of our other duties under the CBA. And then the mayor and commission will decide if they believe the verification agent or not. To my knowledge, at least the way I believe it's drafted as of right now, that those reports, those annual reports, go to the full mark for you guys to be able to see the progress and monitor and make sure that you believe that the CBA is being followed on an annual basis. So it's just that verification process.
That's correct. Yeah, I agree with all of that. And just to sort of maybe frame it for the board's consideration, there's obviously a cost-benefit analysis just basically here of extending the term for 13 additional years to get out to a full 30 years, and having additional students but not having the tax revenue for that period of time. So that's the basic decision. To participate beyond that and actually have a part in this deciding whether each individual expense as the project is built is eligible for TAD funds or not from the property tax increment. Again, that's a trade-off. If you want to participate in that decision, then you're going to have some legal exposure. From my perspective, I thought the basic business decision is a legitimate question for this board to address and decide. I insisted that you not take on that additional exposure. I think that's an additional unknown cost that I didn't think was legally sound.
So you forewent potential income because you would have been the lawyer representing us. Just kidding.
No. Okay, I'll revisit that. No.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and the development team for that presentation. We appreciate it, and we will be voting on Monday after our hearing. Thank you guys for being present. Thank you.
We certainly appreciate your time this evening. Thank you so much. And thank you so much, Dr. Anderson and Ms. Davis, for your time at the MARC committee.
And I'm sorry, I just thought of one other question before you leave, and I don't want to bring it up on Monday or Tuesday whenever we vote. There's no specific set aside, but if there is a set aside, is there a cost to that? I hear you saying you're sort of at your limits. When you set aside a particular percentage for minority contractors, does that push you beyond?
So I'm gonna get way out of my wheelhouse here, and this is a legal question. Actually, you know what? Ken, did you hear that question? I think we addressed it at the last MARC meeting, but some of the legalities around being able to have that happen like that.
Well, I mean, and this is Ken Neighbors, McGuire Woods. I'll just say that much like the EBO plan, the small women and minority-owned business affordable commercial space allotment is really, it's a good faith extension from the developer and the owner team. The cost associated with it really is the delta between what market rent is in a particular year and what the police rent is. And I think you heard it was 12 to 14 per square foot. When this is built out and as things go well, it could be $20 or more per square foot. So the delta is the cost, and you run that over the life of the program.
I'm sorry.
Some of that is a policy thing, and I think what the development team has said is it's a very diverse team, and we're very committed to that. This is a policy objective.
I think that the question was more in regard to the construction, if we set aside a certain percentage of the construction to be dedicated. Is that correct, Ms. Gant? And that was an issue that you addressed at the last MARC meeting about a study that had to be done that wasn't.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's right. I'm sorry, I missed it. So the other part of that, the EBO program, a city or a county has to have a disparity study to have a requirement, what people call a set aside, right? A firm number. And so if you don't have a disparity study, and we understand that is in process but not completed at Athens Clarke County, then all you really can do is have a goal or objective. And I think that's how we have framed that particular performance benchmark milestone and policy objective. We've done it as essentially, we're going to make a good faith and best efforts to do various things to really include minority female businesses in every measure of the construction of the project.
If I may just add into that, and Ken, if you disagree with this, tell me, but the board might understand this in comparison to recruitment efforts for minority hiring. I think the CBA reflects efforts at recruiting and making sure minority and female-owned businesses participate, know about the project, have opportunities to bid, but just as with hiring, you cannot actually go to set-asides without an affirmative action plan that's approved through DOJ. The same for contracting. You can't do set-asides without a disparity study that stands up to the court precedents that require that. Did I frame that okay, Ken?
Yeah, right on, spot on.
All right, again, thank you guys for being here. Okay,
Thank you so much.
all right. Thanks.
Is there a reason we can't vote tonight, or do you just all want to wait till Monday to vote?
I'm sorry, what was that, Dr. Yeager?
I was just wondering, is there a reason we're putting off till Monday to vote?
I would love the opportunity to read the most recent
Okay.
community benefits agreement, but I'm going to defer, to the will of the board. But I have not seen the most updated version. I'm one of 8.
So as a board, do you, a majority of the board want to take a vote tonight, or do you want to wait until Monday? That's the question on the table.
I mean, I personally would like to vote tonight if we could, just because it's going to be very difficult for me to be there on Monday also. And I think the same thing for Dr. Yeager, but at the same time, I don't want to rush anybody if they feel like they need to. I'm going to try my best to get here before y'all vote on Monday, but. Yeah. It is going to be difficult for me to get here on Monday, so. But at the same time, I don't want to rush anybody if they feel like they're not at a point where they feel comfortable voting.
Mr. Evans?
Mr. Pruitt, would this be okay for us to do this?
Yes. The only thing I think we had, did y'all adopt did you vote to adopt the agenda? I can't remember.
Yes.
You did. So you'd actually need a 2/3 vote to amend the agenda to say it's going to be discussion and vote, not just discussion. But with that intermediate step, then you can go ahead and vote on it.
So can I move to amend the agenda by adding a vote to this action item?
I'll second that motion.
Okay, we have Dr. Yeager has made a motion to amend our agenda or suspend the rules and take action on the mall-TAD agreement, the intergovernmental agreement. That was a second by Mr. Denson. Okay. All in favor? Oh, I'm sorry. Any questions about that, that motion? Okay, all in favor of revising our agenda, suspending the rules to take action on the mall-TAD development, the intergovernmental agreement, if you would raise your hands and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The same signs. I think that was unanimous. Okay. So now the floor is open for a motion for the intergovernmental agreement.
Before we move, could I ask just one point of clarification? So we have not seen that final CBA to ensure that all of those changes that they posted on that PowerPoint are written as they were requested?
That's correct. I just looked at the last version I have, and the only thing I think that's missing from it is the changing the 80% to 60%, but there may be some that I haven't seen.
Mm-hmm.
No, we actually just solved that equation literally mid-morning this morning and sent that information this afternoon to the county attorney. Mr. Neighbors sent that over to them to be included. And I think the other stuff that you're adopting in the IGA, there's language that it says that the CBA has the lineup of what you're adopting. So I'm totally fine if you wanted to add into the IGA that is included in there, if that gives you comfort.
Yeah, the only thing is we'd have to, I guess I would need a little bit of time to add these things into the IGA amendment because not all of those details, I mean, you've seen it, I hope, it's attached to the agenda, so most of the things I think that the board has discussed are covered there now with the new wording that Dr. Anderson mentioned. Not everything is in there that you've talked about tonight, such as the minority participation and the 60% AMI. So if you want to add those to the amendment, I'll need a little time to redraft it. If you want to just go on the fact that I guess the mayor's still here and trust the mayor and commission to include those, that's fine too.
Everything is in the attorney's hands at the city as of today at 3 o'clock.
So then in the motion, would we need to conditionally approve? Can that happen?
I would not recommend trying to go down that road.
Thank you. So it sounds like we're still in discussion now, are we not?
Well, I just
We
wanted
don't-
to make sure that we were clear
Okay.
that that final language has not really been sent to all the parties, and so we can trust that it's all there as we requested it. I just wanted to be clear that we still have not really seen it before you guys decide if you're going to move with a vote.
And if we can trust the mayor and the others to get those corrections to us and trust our attorney to make those revisions to our IGA, could we move forward?
Well, you can't vote, you can only vote on what's already in writing.
Okay.
So you can vote on the IG amendment as it is, which contains most, but not all of what you've talked about.
So are you recommending that we wait until Monday to cast our vote?
I have no recommendation one way or the other. If the
Board, this is left in our hands. Our attorney is going to leave this in our hands. So this is a trust factor among us and the ACC government.
I think as a part of governance, I think there are going to be some things that we just don't know, right? Beyond the community benefits agreement, like we can't fully predict what's, the future. There are a lot of unknowns. But I do think as a part of governance, we have an item here that we're voting on that does not include the things that we have requested. I am not comfortable voting on that. It's not necessarily the unknowns. It's the fact that if we are all in agreement, then we'll know then those things will be there Monday. And part of the reason that makes me uncomfortable is because, it is a sort of a process, and it's a process that's taken place with a lot of revisions. And I would hate for us to get to next week beyond a vote and then figure out, wait a minute, there was something that was left out, not because there was malintention, but there was just something that in all of these conversations and all of these pages and all of these words that all of us just happened to forget about. So I know we don't have a motion on the table right now, but I do want to give some context for that vote for me, should there be a motion on the table. There are a few other things I'm not comfortable with, but particularly taking action on a document that is not complete, although we do agree on those things that need to be there. I don't think that is the strongest governance decision that we could make right now. But I'm happy to, again, follow the will of the board. So if there is a motion, we've amended our agenda, we've suspended the rules, so the space is certainly there for a motion to be made.
Just make sure you know.
I'll just say, yeah, and again, if there's people uncomfortable, I want us to be voting on this decision, which is a very big decision where we all feel comfortable and ready. So I mean, hearing our chair saying that she is not yet comfortable, I would prefer then to go ahead and just, and table this till Monday, or just leave it on the table, yeah. So I will not be making a motion then, if you are, and other people on this body is uncomfortable right now.
I mean, Monday still gets them their Tuesday deadline. Monday still gets them their Tuesday deadline, and, you know, I agree with Mr. Denson that, you know, the chair and everyone should be comfortable with what we're voting on.
So if that's the will of the board, I would just suggest to clear up the record that you have a motion to postpone the vote until a call meeting on Monday.
So moved.
Second.
Further discussion on the motion to postpone the vote. Dr. Yeager, I think I
was just going to make sure there's a quorum on Monday, because I won't be here.
Oh, on Monday. Will there be a quorum? I think.
Concern we don't have.
Yes, I believe we have a quorum for the hearing, so we can carry that out on Monday. And Mr. Denson, you say you may be late to that.
I can get here by like 5:15, 5:20, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So you have, Lisa and I were just discussing what time to call the meeting for Monday. You have the appeal hearing at 4 o'clock, so just depends on how much time I suppose you think you need for that. So it could be called at 5:30. Could be called later for that matter to allow members to get here.
I think 5:30, at least 5:30. Dr. Yeager, you won't be available at all. I see.
So we've got Mr. Denson, Ms. Davis, Ms. Butts, will you be there? Ms. Hensley? Okay. Mr. Evans? Oh, so we'll have a quorum. We can do it Monday at 5:30 after the hearing.
And so we do have a motion to table the vote for the TAD IGA until our call meeting on Monday at 5:30. Mr. Denson made that motion. Ms. Davis seconded it. Any follow-up conversation before we take a vote to table that? All in favor of tabling the vote until Monday, if you would, raise your hands and say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. So that motion passes. We will have our call meeting on Monday at 5:30. We'll move forward to item 10, and this is the financial report, the January 2023 financial report.
Good evening, Board. What you have before you is the financial statements through January 31st, 2023. So that's 7 periods of the 12 full months of the fiscal year. The first report that you're looking at is a statement of revenues. Overall, compared to our monthly budget of what we anticipated to bring in through 7 periods, we are ahead of schedule by $4.4 million. Cumulatively, when you're looking at what we brought in as a percent of our budget, we're sitting at 72.7%. And when you compare that to the past 4 years, through period 7, we're kind of right in line with where we have been the past 4 years. So no concerns there. The second report is the statement of expenditures. And just to remind you, the top section is the operating expenditures. And this is a little bit more challenging to pin down and accurately predict by month what we're going to expend. But if you scroll on over to the right, Ms. Palmer, you'll see that we are about $13,000 off of where we expected to be at this point through period 7 in our operational expenses. And that represents 0.04%. So we're actually right on target of where we anticipated to be for our monthly budget for our operational expenditures. Salary and benefits, we can be much more precise. We know when those salary and benefits hit. We know based off of 10-month, 11-month, or 12-month contract throughout the year exactly when those are going to hit, and we are $708,000 below where we projected to be at this point. So you take those two into consideration, and we're roughly $700,000 to the good, looking at our overall expenditures. So that's roughly 0.4% of where we anticipated to be with expenditures. So we're right on target, a little under, which in my opinion is great news. So the final report is the balance sheet and fund balance projection. We have assets of $95.2 million, liabilities of $62.5 million, leaving a fund balance undesignated reserve of $95.1 million. When you as you take that and compare it to our annual budget, that represents 50.3% of our overall budget, and we planned on being about 47.6% at this period. So that difference, once again, it's because of the revenues. We're receiving a little bit quicker than anticipated, and we are under our expenses by $700,000. So that roughly 4% difference in fund balance is $5.2 million. So the red line and where we have that point there in period 7, the difference between the red line and the orange line is $5.2 million. Before we move on from our financial statements, are there any questions? Okay, Ms. Palmer, if we go on to the supplementary information. For our professional legal services, we actually have, by the time I pulled this report in period 8, we have a total amount of expenditures of $64,391 of our $183,000 budget. So we have $118,608 left in our legal budget. School board travel, we've expended $13,403 of our $22,500 budget. So y'all still have a little over $9,000 left in your travel budget. And then the final two reports are our invoices that exceeded $10,000 that we paid in period 7 for all funds. And those are sorted by vendor. And then the final report that we have is our Senate Bill 68 report for all funds. This shows what our overall revenue budget is, what our overall expenditure budget, and what we've actually received and spent, and then what remains for every single fund that we maintain here at CCSD. So that's my financial report, and I'll happily entertain any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Schuman. Are there any questions for our financial advisor?
No, but thank you so much for the revenue report.
Very welcome.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Schuman. All right, we'll move to our next item.
Thank you. All right, we are at item 11, and these are our policies to adopt, rescind, or revise.
Right, and this is GAE. Go ahead, Mr. Denson, did you have questions? I just wanted to, let me put on my glasses, I apologize. To share with the board, we have reviewed the proposed changes to this policy. We included the additional proposed protected categories. Doing so is an expansion of the state and federal law, so we deleted the third paragraph on the purpose to ensure we are consistent in our language. We corrected the error edits. We did not make the suggested change regarding the limit of 90 days to file a complaint. The current policy has no limit on the time frame to make a complaint and to remain open to all complaints. We do not wish to place a limit. We believe that this provides for the most benefit to employees who may delay a complaint for a variety of reasons. The current reference to 30 days simply preserves the affirmative defense as provided by the law and articulated by Mr. Pruitt.
So I think that last statement you said articulated by Mr. Pruitt, so the attorney's report is in here somewhere?
That was in an earlier report, I believe, during one of our discussions on this at our last meeting. Am I correct, Mr. Pruitt, concerning, you did suggest this?
Right. There may not have been anything in writing that ever went to the board as sort of an exchange between those, us, but, yeah, and the 30 days or 90 days, none of that is really a drop-dead date. It's related to this affirmative defense that you have a policy. The affirmative defense really isn't related to the dates at all. It's just related to the fact that you have a policy for employees to report this in a number of ways so that nobody should ever have to feel uncomfortable doing it. The date, I would not recommend putting in a deadline and leaving it like it is with just a sort of a warning that 30 days may compromise it, because I'm not sure, frankly, that even a 90-day deadline would, if somebody reports sexual harassment on the 91st day, you probably should still investigate it. You simply have a policy saying, we'll do the best we can, but this delay may impede the investigation.
Okay.
So my other question was, we've been very specific about, a lot of this looks like, what is the other thing that we issue, regs?
I can't.
Are there regs that go along with this policy? Because it looks like that information is included in here.
I'm not sure about that, Mr. Pruitt.
Well, let's see, I don't have that particular window up, but I don't think there's a regulation for this policy, and off the top of my head, I can't think what extra you would put in a regulation anyway. I think it's pretty much all covered here. And really, this is one of those that needs to be covered here because of federal legal requirements. It needs to be covered in policy and not just a regulation.
I just want to try and be consistent with that, so thank you.
There is a reg, GAE 1-R1, complaint procedure.
And so this matches that, obviously.
Let me see if I can get to that.
If the reg does not, we will be able to make those corrections after this is approved by the board.
Thank you.
Yeah, I don't think any of the changes you're making shouldn't, well, there could be language in the reg it changes, but I think the reg is more about, it's more internal procedures of who does the intake, who does the investigation, what are the steps.
Okay.
Yeah, deadlines for for staff along the way to respond.
Well, I definitely like the comprehensive nature of this policy because it tells me mostly what I want to know, so thank you.
Thank you. Other questions?
Mr. Denson?
Yeah, I would just say, appreciate superintendent and staff reviewing those changes, and I agree with the rationale that's all behind this, so thank you.
Dr. Yeager, do you have a question? Your mic is on.
Good.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other information I just want to share with you, we've received some questions about policies that the board expected to review and vote on, but have not been brought to the agenda. Here's a list. IFCD, we will bring it to the board in April. School volunteers. IDE 2, competitive interscholastic activities, grades 6 through 8. EEE, the wellness policy, and EIEDA, the recess policy. We will bring those before the board in April.
And Dr. Hooker, and I also with the last month's motion, for us to also revise or take a look at the policy for renaming facilities. I think part of that process is us sort of starting with a draft of sorts, something that we can work our way back and bring to the board. And so if you have any preliminary thoughts around that, please email that to us, and that way we can just sort of get something together. Of course, it'll come to the board, and then it'll go out for public comment and things like that. But that was a part of our conversation as well. So if you have any thoughts, just feedback that you've gotten so far from constituents and things like that, if you would share that.
Ms. Palmer.
Would it be okay if we had the financial report and this policy added to consent agenda for next week so we don't have to do them individually?
Thank you.
All right. Item 12, personnel actions. Dr. Hooker, is there any additional information we need to know based on these?
No, Madam Chair.
All right, we have a consent agenda before us, and Ms. Palmer just said that she would add those 2 items to the consent agenda. But do we need to pull off any of these items? So work session minutes, board meeting minutes, field trips. Okay, the tire truck for transportation. Mr. Denson?
I would like to remove item H just for discussion, and then remove item L for some questions.
Okay, items H and L. Okay, Ms. Butts?
I would like to remove item F and H as well.
That was item F, and what was the other one?
H, I think Mr. Denson said.
Okay, the one that Mr. Denson mentioned too, okay. All right, so tire truck stays on, CRG mapping for all the buildings. All right, we're removing F. The imitation STEM kits, that stays on. H, the Kids Read Now, that will be pulled. The 2024-2025 academic calendar, do you want that to stay on? All right, I'm not hearing anything, so we'll keep that one on. Strategic plan consultant contract.
Which one are we talking about?
Are you talking about
I
J?
skipped that. Yeah, this item J, yes.
Okay, would you like us to pull that, Ms. Davis?
I haven't read it, so let me just leave it, and then if I have questions, I'll email during the week.
Okay, so I'm going to recommend that we pull item J.
Sure.
So we can address any questions. What about K? All right, K will remain on, and then we are pulling L. Is that correct? Okay.
And am I correct, you, questions that you have concerning these policies, concerning the items listed here, that you will put in the questions that the board have, okay? We'll be glad to answer those throughout the week, okay?
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, so that means for F, H, J, and L, those questions will be placed in our questions document, and they will be pulled from the agenda. All right, we are at item 14. This is adjournment. Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Denson made a second. If there are no objections, we are adjourned at 8:40.